Cracking ride! Cracking ride, boy! Cracking!
Into the finish, your last buoy.
You say I'm crazy, wow, but I don't care, baby. Wow, you wanna love me and you wanna hate me, but I can't walk away. I gave you up one time, I felt so high, I felt so low, and you always lie, but I want you more. I gave you up one time, I don't know why, but I want you more. Always come back for more. I want you to love me, I need you to stay. Have you found another? Ooh, I want you to love me, and I won't make mistakes. Please just give me something. You said I'm angry. Wow, but you're gonna save me. Wow, you have me one day and don't wanna know me, but I can't walk away. I gave you up one time, I felt so high, I felt so low, and you always lie, but I want you more. I gave you up one time, I don't know why, but I want you more. Always come back for more. I want you to love me, I need you to stay. Have you found another? Ooh, I want you to love me, and I won't make mistakes. Please just give me something. Ooh.
Right, race summary video, the much anticipated one. Sit tight, grab a drink, mine's a cider, to go through the summary. Okay, so I've waited 6 days or so post-race to do a bit of a race summary. Obviously I've had lots of thoughts and feelings and emotions over the last week, but it's always important to really reflect and think about the race and process it before you potentially put stuff out in the public domain or talk to too many people, or at least that's what I like to do. I haven't written a full script for this, but I do have a bullet pointed list of things that I wanted to cover off, which hopefully you'll find insightful, useful and interesting. So I'll start right at the top of the day. We started about 3:30, get up, and we had to make our way into downtown Tulsa to get a bus to the start line, or T1. This is a unique thing about the race as such, in the sense that you're not allowed to drive or get yourself out to T1 yourself. So both athletes and spectators all had to make the bus journey, which was about 20 to 30 minutes from downtown Tulsa out to the race. As much as it was a bit of a nuisance in terms of logistics, it actually was pretty fun. You know, from the moment you're then at T1, you're in it with all the other athletes and spectators, in the sense, and there's a real sense of kind of you're in this together, whether you're doing the half or the full. We also got to ride on old school buses that we're used to seeing on TV or in films, the yellow school bus that's famous in America, out to the race. Apart from the bus being about 1,000,000 degrees in terms of heat, it was quite a pleasant journey. It was over quite quickly, and before we knew it, we were at T1. On arriving to T1, it was pitch black. Luckily I had a head torch just to see what I was doing in transition, to set my bike up. Noel and I were number 93 and 94, so we were right next to each other. We helped each other with nutrition and blowing our tyres up and all that good stuff. We had loads of time, even if the race at the start of the race happened when it should have. I was able to go down to the bike bag, check that that's still there and hadn't been stolen by a raccoon overnight, which apparently has happened at this race. My bike shoes and helmet were in there. You weren't allowed to put your bike shoes on the bike. I then walked the way you would come out of the swim, up the ramp, through the change tent, and then out to your bike, just to rehearse that again and make sure I knew where I was going, obviously in the heat at the moment coming out the swim. I then had about an hour and a half to pretty much chill out and mingle with other racers and spectators. We had even more time due to the swim having a delayed start. So the original plan was for 6:30 the 70.3 athletes would go off, and half an hour later the Ironman athletes. Unfortunately, due to some fog, I mean, it's completely the correct decision, you couldn't even see the lake from where we were, let alone the sighting buoys. We had to wait for the sun to come up and the fog to lift to be able to swim safely. From memory, we then started at about 7:45, which was about 15 minutes after the 70.3 swimmers, and we were corralled sort of 7:30. So there's about a 30 to 40 minute delay to the swim. The only really notable thing at this point was, although I'm not particularly patriotic, let alone to the Americans, having the national anthem of America sang at the start line was pretty cool. It doesn't quite beat Tenby with the Welsh national anthem. Most of the field were American, and it was quite a sense heightening sort of moment. Once we were able to go, I was right at the front. I was in the first 5 swimmers to enter the water, as per theme with me racing. I wanted to be at the front from the start and obviously know who I was racing, etc. I could tell there were some good swimmers there, so hoped for the best in terms of some feet. In terms of the swim, I swam 1:02 exactly. I'm happy with the swim in the sense that on reflection, the swim was definitely a little bit long. Last year it was actually 800 meters long, so it wasn't anywhere near that long. And B, relative to the rest of the swimmers, even the guy that swam 47 minutes, but other swimmers I knew, like Noel, all swam around 3 minutes slower than their sort of normal time in an Ironman, which, you know, puts me under an hour in theory, but I obviously was chasing a bit faster than that. I can see obviously from the data, my heart rate was where it should be for the swim. My heart rate was in the high 140s, 150s, which if you compare that to bike and run is sort of my aerobic sort of effort. In theory, I executed the swim that I was capable of. Yes, I'm annoyed it's not under an hour, but I did get out of the water in the top 20, and I think I left 12th when we left transition. So exactly where I would expect to be regardless of the length of the swim. It was a 2-lap swim. We did have to unfortunately swim through a lot of 70.3 athletes on the first lap, which meant it was really difficult to sort of stay on people's feet, which was a little bit annoying. Out onto the bike, unfortunately my mum missed transition 1 due to my pace that I go through it. Nothing notable there. The only annoying thing is this rule that they had around not having your bike shoes on your bike, which meant running. I chose to run the sort of 500-600 meters through transition with my shoes on and my cleats. I did have quite an old pair of cleats on, and when I jumped on my bike, plastic sort of aero cap of the Speedplay cleats kind of snapped, which minor thing, but when I first went to clip in, my shoe wouldn't clip in, and I thought this is game over if I can't clip my shoe in. But got on my bike and got going. Let's have a drink. Oh. So onto the bike. Now, I had no idea that I was where I was in the field. That 12th out of T2 comes, T1. So I got onto the bike. There were obviously a lot of 70.3 people. As much as this was annoying to some degree because I had no idea who was who, although there were different colour numbers on the bike, so you were a yellow number if you were racing 70.3 and a white one, and I didn't see many white ones. It definitely helped for me in terms of I was just overtaking people for all that time, which motivated me. It made me feel like I was riding well, you know, even if they, you know, were people there to complete it, and they're not even in your race, it just helped pass the time so much more. So the bike was going reasonably well. I wasn't really sure if I was actually making any positions up because I didn't see any white numbers. So the whole time I knew there must be people up the road because of where I swam, etc. We got to about, I think it was about 40k, and there was a small out and back, and that's where I saw Noel for the first time, and I knew Noel would swim quicker than me, but I also knew if I see him, he's near the front of the race. I took a split and it was about 2 minutes, just under, and I thought, well, he's definitely swam more than 2 minutes faster than me. I would expect it to be closer to 5 if not 7 minutes, and so therefore I have been catching him. So keep riding how you're riding, but you will catch Noel, you will catch him before halfway, and therefore you are making good progress through the field. I ended up catching Noel about half an hour later, and we actually were on a hill, one of the sort of rolling hills, but it was a slightly longer one. I was pushing good power, and I came past him, and I just told him, I think I said something like, "Do not chase me." Although Noel and I had gone back and forth all week on who's going to beat who, etc., in my head I knew I'd biked quite a lot of time into him at that point, and what I didn't want him to do was to kind of follow me and ruin his own race by sort of over biking and let the race play out as he was, as he should. So he replied something like, "I won't," and off I went, and he didn't necessarily try. So that was the first sort of verification that I'm riding well. I think at the time Noel was in 3rd or 4th place, although I didn't know that. And so in my head, there must be only a couple of people up the road. As we got down towards the town of Tulsa, it was about 80k. The 70.3 people turn off left to go into town to finish their bike, and the Ironman course carries straight on. And it was at that point I had my first opportunity to sort of ask a marshal how many people are ahead and what's the gap. And I got a rather useful gap of the next person's 2 minutes and there's 2 people. So at that point I thought I can definitely catch second, but I have no idea how far first is, and I could kind of see second over some of these rolling roads. Kind of got my head down, I just kept doing what I was doing. I didn't change my plan in terms of effort or how hard I was riding at times, and we got to the second out and back on the course, and I was able to see first, who was 4 minutes 4 seconds ahead, and second was about a minute. At that point I didn't really think it was possible for me to catch the front of the race. I knew in my head that person was riding really well. I didn't anticipate that person had swam so fast. So I thought they'd swam a low 50. I wasn't putting enough time into them. I'd probably get second, but in some ways I'd be happy with that, so that I had to chase on the run and it would keep me honest. I caught second. We then go across a road that I had ridden prior to the race, knew it was relatively fast, got my head down there. And when we started the second loop, there was a hill that I'd already been up, which was called the Tulsa Test. This was I don't know how long it was, but it was about an 8-minute effort that they had a timing chip at the bottom and top, and the winner, or the fastest person up it, would gain a prize. Now when I got to that, we were about 120, 30k in, and I saw the lad that was leading, and I seen that I'd put time in. It was at that point I made the decision, I'm going to go after the front of the race. I didn't necessarily push too much harder, but I really wanted to kind of see if I could get to the front of the race. I could see the guy had sort of 3 motos with him and a lead car, and I just wanted that feeling. I made no bones about it. I wanted to try and win and lead this race. Went up this hill. I didn't catch him on the hill, but I caught him about 10k later, and he was the only person I overtook who, as I went past him, his name's Josh Bird, I think. Phenomenal swimmer. I mean, great athlete. I went past him and I could tell he wasn't going to try and come with me. He definitely was either starting to struggle like most people do in the last hour of the bike, but I could definitely tell that he was on his sort of limit and was sort of suffering a bit. So at that point I knew I had about 30k left to T2. I definitely was going to put some time into him, and I was definitely going to have a lead going off the bike by a few minutes and see what happens. The last 30k was really good in terms of riding with the sheriffs. They were riding about 100 meters ahead of me, if not more, so it wasn't like I was getting a pro level TV camera style escort, but they were patrolling the junctions and sort of making sure that I could just get my head down and ride through, which was really cool. Overall my bike time was 4:41, which I'm really happy with. I knew from riding bits of the course in the week that it was definitely faster than a 5-hour bike split. Bearing in mind I rode the whole thing as a time trial, so I think my Roth time was a few minutes quicker, but that was riding with people. I think 4:41, an honest bike course with 1,500 meters of elevation, and it being a solo time trial, I don't think I could have ridden it any better. I definitely could have pushed, in theory, a bit more power, but I felt full of energy for the entire ride. I felt well within myself for the entire ride, and I felt like the times where I was going 45k an hour, 50k an hour, I was easing off and making sure I was aero, and the sort of rolling climbs I was pushing relatively hard to kind of maximise speed. So in my opinion it's my best bike split ever. Obviously taking the lead and all that sort of stuff adds to that, but in terms of executing what I planned to do, I sort of normalised 230 watts, which was sort of what I was aiming for, and it's a pretty steady effort all day. My heart rate was just under 150, what I was aiming for, so very happy with that. I came off the bike, I saw my mum immediately, left T2, had a super quick T2, obviously don't know that until after the race, but I think I spent 90 seconds in T2 compared to some of the people that took closer to 2-3 minutes. You can see when I leave T2 I'm still putting my hat on and my race number. I do everything on the move apart from putting my shoes on, and there were people there to catch your bike and help you with your bag and stuff, which was really cool. Leaving T2, I knew I had someone shouted around 3-minute gap, and the second place or the third place person was like 4.5 minutes.
I am definitely going to need more tissues by the end of the day.
So I knew I had a decent lead, and I thought this is mine to lose now. The first 3-4k of the run is a slight downhill, and I ran, first K was a 4-minute K, which was kind of the race plan, but I definitely decided to kind of back off a little bit. Even though it's downhill, I just wanted to relax, get my heart rate under control, make sure my pockets were full of my fuel and stuff, etc., and settle in. The second K, I think, was like a 4:20 something, and I was a little bit like, well, don't relax that much. Come on, you know, you're definitely capable of running a bit quicker than this. And from then on, it just didn't happen. I didn't feel like I struggled with energy. I had a caffeine gel with like 5k in. I'd finished my first 90-gram gel on the hour, so I'd had 120 grams of carbs in the first hour. I had my whole 500ml flask of fluid within the first 5-6k as planned, and I still haven't quite put my finger on what happened. I think I got a bit complacent, a bit cocky maybe, and I kind of thought, well, if I run 4:20s and 4:30s, I'm not really going to get caught unless someone's motoring. And unfortunately somebody was. And when I saw my mum around 10-12k, I could tell from the look on her face that someone was coming, and I was really disheartened by it, and I was really annoyed, and I didn't even try. When I did the turnaround, the first loop, and I came back the other way, and I got a split on the then second place person, the overall winner in the end, I knew it was under 2 minutes, and I knew he started way further back, so in my head it just wasn't worth trying. I really regret that decision and those decisions I made. I definitely was able to run quicker than I did, not just through training, just I didn't feel bad, I didn't push myself, I don't know why, I just didn't try. Once I'd lost first place, it's kept me awake every night since. Why didn't I just try and run with him? He wasn't at that point running much faster than a 3-hour marathon pace, so well within my capability. And if I'd have just put him under a bit of pressure, I found out post-race he really struggled, he was sick on the run and stuff, so if I'd have just gone for it, like I said I was going to, then maybe there would have been a slightly different result. Apart from that, the run was fairly uneventful. After the guy had overtaken me, I kind of knew second was tied up, in the sense that the next person was 5-6 minutes back. With the out and backs or the big loops, I could manage that gap myself. I could see it wasn't coming down drastically. There was a guy who was running really well, but even though he was running, I think he might have run a 2:56 or something, you know, he started so far back that I wasn't worried about him. I had all my fuel, the 3 90-gram gels, a caffeine gel, I had a tiny bit of Gatorade and Coke near the end of the run. I had drunk at every aid station, I had ice at every aid station, I used my salt tablets. So everything apart from the pacing part of it or the effort part of it, I just didn't execute. The last 3-4k was back up the hill, back to Tulsa. Apparently there's a rule in Oklahoma, or definitely in Tulsa, that every race has to finish uphill. That was an absolute killer. It really was a long slog up some motorway junction and then back into town. And yeah, finishing at the finish line, you know, it was still an awesome feeling. I still was proud of what I'd managed to achieve, and although I didn't win the race, I won my age group, managed to have, there was a fair amount of people at the finish line that were supporting. Knowles were following me and him, and there was a lot of people there cheering my name that I didn't know who they were, that I was immensely grateful for their support. So the next day we did go to the award ceremony, did get my plaque for winning my age group, and obviously the French flag gives it away here. I took my niece slot, which was the plan. So the award ceremony is pretty weird. They're not as strict as they are in the UK in the sense of reading people's names out. You get one opportunity to say yes, or in this case we, to accepting your slot, and if you don't accept your slot after they read your name once, they sort of move on. One person forgot to say we, and they went back to him and gave him his slot, which I've never seen happen in the UK. You know, if you miss your opportunity, you're done. So they were a bit more fluid with that, but it was great that it was an award ceremony in person like we had in Tembe, and people were having those magic moments who'd been, you know, waiting to qualify, etc. And obviously the females going to Kona was nice to see, in terms of, it definitely has that little bit special when it's Kona and not Nice. The slot allocation, there were slots that were rolling quite a lot, but I would say most people were taking their Nice slots. There definitely was a trend that most people that were in the 40 plus age groups were taking Nice slots, and the those in the younger age groups, you know, particularly those in the 18 to 24 and 25 to 29, weren't taking it. And I think some of that's the financial thing rather than it being in Nice and not Kona. It definitely seemed more of a sort of middle-aged man type thing to accept. But I expect we'll see that across the world, not just in America. But the slots weren't rolling to 100 plus people, whatever. I think the most I saw it go down to was someone in their 20s. In terms of 20th position in their age group, so not too bad. Right, that's it. Wrap the video up there. Thank you for watching. Thank you for all the support I had, both from people out there and people back at home. Stay tuned on the channel. We're definitely going to continue to vlog both my training and some other interesting videos. We've got some stuff in the pipeline. I have Finland and Nice to do, so there'll be 2 World Championships within 2 weeks at the end of the summer, which I'll prepare for, and all being well, I will start to nail running off the bike, because if I can run off the bike, then I hope you would agree I could be a bit of a weapon in the age group world. So let's keep working at it, and it will come, and we'll see you on the other side.